Did you know that 8 out of the 13 coffee creamers sitting on your local grocery store shelf right now contain absolutely zero cream? Think about that for a second. That rich, velvety swirl you poured into your mug this morning, the one you look forward to every single day, isn't dairy at all. It is literally just soybean oil, tap water, and a highly engineered cocktail of chemical stabilizers designed to trick your brain into thinking it is drinking dairy. Even worse, the multi-billion-dollar food industry is actively exploiting a massive regulatory loophole that legally lets them print zero trans fats on the label, even when the bottle is loaded with them. The math was manipulated, my friend, not the recipe. But don't panic just yet, because while most of the aisle is a chemical wasteland, there are a few brands out there playing a completely different game, using a sourcing standard that the rest of the industry claims is financially impossible. Over the next few minutes, we are going to look at the manufacturing blueprints of the most famous creamers in America. I am going to show you exactly which 10 massive bottles you need to pull from your fridge immediately, and we will break down the 3 rare options that actually passed our investigation with flying colors. We are completely skipping the superficial wellness trends today and looking directly at the hard facts. And you will want to stay tuned until the very end, because the most shocking, deeply trusted brand on the list is one you probably buy every single week thinking it is completely healthy. Before we name names and start dragging these corporate giants into the light, we need to build a quick educational foundation. We need to talk about how a modern creamer is actually constructed. See, real cream is beautiful in its simplicity. It is a natural emulsion of milk fat and water. When you pour it into hot coffee, those microscopic fat globules disperse naturally, cutting through the bitterness and giving you that smooth mouthfeel. But real dairy is expensive to harvest, heavy to ship, and spoils quickly. So, how does a mega corporation maximize profits? They completely replace the dairy fat with cheap industrial seed oils. To make oil and water mix without immediately separating into an unappealing slick, they use high-shear mechanical blenders to force them together, creating a literal optical illusion of cream. To keep this fake structure from collapsing when it hits your hot, acidic coffee, they have to inject a heavy chemistry stack of synthetic texturizers, phosphates, and gums. It is the exact same concept as putting a cheap aftermarket body kit on a broken-down car to make it look like a luxury sports vehicle. Every single fact we uncovered is a mini revelation of corporate greed, and by the time we are done, you will know more than 90% of the shoppers in the supermarket. The industry has been treating us like fools, but today we are taking the power back. Let's dive straight into the belly of the beast and start breaking down the bad brands, counting down from the basic offenders to the absolute worst marketing scams on the market. If you already feel like checking your own fridge right now, make sure to hit that subscribe button, because things are about to get a whole lot harsher. We start with number 10, Coffeemate Classic and French Vanilla. Owned by the global mega corporation Nestle, Coffeemate is positioned as America's #1 creamer. It is that institutional, nostalgic pour that has sat on grocery store tables for generations. But let's strip away the cozy morning aesthetic. This formulation wasn't engineered for your health. It was optimized to survive weeks of temperature abuse on a warm shipping dock without spoiling. Turn that plastic bottle around. After water and sugar, the very third ingredient staring back at you is soybean oil. That velvety, rich texture you think you are paying for isn't premium dairy. It's industrial seed oil whipped into submission. Then comes the trans fat sleight of hand. The food industry found a brilliant legal loophole. If a single portion contains less than 0.5 grams of trans fats, the law allows them to round that number down to 0. So, what did they do? They simply shrank the official serving size on the back panel to a ridiculous single tablespoon. They didn't actually remove the dangerous trans fats. They just manipulated the math. The rest of the bottle is filled with dipotassium phosphate, cellulose gel, cellulose gum, and carrageenan. That isn't a recipe. It's a chemistry stack engineered to mimic dairy at a fraction of the cost. Millions of Americans are unknowingly triggering underlying soy sensitivities before they even leave the house, all while consuming microplastics because these single-use bottles regularly leach phthalates during warm warehouse shipping. For a product that costs around $4 to $5 a bottle, you are essentially buying a jug of masked bioengineered cooking oil. Coffeemate isn't cream. It's an industrial lubricant wearing a breakfast costume. Moving along the aisle, we hit number 9, International Delight French Vanilla. This brand markets itself as the ultimate indulgent coffeehouse experience brought right to your kitchen counter. In reality, it runs on the exact same industrial seed oil skeleton as Coffeemate, but it doubles down on aggressive chemical texturizers to manufacture a fake, velvety mouthfeel. The formulation leans heavily on carrageenan and gellan gum. Here is the problem. Published gastrointestinal toxicology literature has repeatedly flagged carrageenan for actively breaking down the tight junctions of your intestinal lining. That is your gut barrier, the literal gatekeeper that decides what enters your bloodstream and what stays out. You wanted a smooth morning brew, but instead, you got a seaweed-derived stabilizer that picks a physical fight with your immune system before breakfast. In fact, carrageenan has been completely banned from organic certified products globally since 2018 for this exact reason. On top of that, the high potassium load is an absolute nightmare for kidney-compromised consumers who drink multiple cups a day. While the cheap resealable plastic cap accelerates oxidation every single time you open it, making the oils go rancid faster, it's a premium price for a gut-shredding illusion. Now, let's talk about a brand that built an entire empire on a single word. Coffeemate Zero Sugar, our number 8. This stuff is aggressively marketed to diabetic dieters and the metabolically cautious as a completely guilt-free morning ritual. But the substitution chemistry happening inside this bottle is actually far more aggressive than the original full sugar version. The corporate scientists took out the sugar and replaced it with a highly chaotic 3-compound artificial sweetener stack: sucralose, acesulfame potassium, and erythritol. Recent peer-reviewed studies have documented measurable, negative shifts in gut microbiome composition within just 24 to 48 hours of repeated exposure to combinations in this specific chemical class. Think about the biological confusion here. Your tongue registers a hypersweet sensation, your body prepares a massive insulin response, but then it receives absolutely zero caloric payload. Your metabolic system completely panics, dysregulating your hunger signaling for the next 90 minutes and forcing you to overeat later. To make matters worse, acesulfame potassium leaves a harsh metallic aftertaste that requires even more chemical additives to mask, and when sucralose is heated above 120 degrees, like, say, in a steaming cup of hot coffee, its breakdown can produce toxic chloropropanol. The zero sugar claim is just a corporate shield exempting them from added sugar warnings, selling you metabolic chaos in a bottle. If you think that's bad, look at number 7, Dunkin' Extra Extra Creamer. Licensed through a major third-party dairy co-packer, this brand trades entirely on decades of cozy donut shop nostalgia. But when you apply actual laboratory scrutiny, this formulation reveals itself as a complete metabolic disaster. Yes, it does contain skim milk, which is a fantastic marketing trick to put on the front label, but the actual recipe is front-loaded with an obscene amount of sugar and high fructose corn syrup. Let's be honest about consumer behavior. Nobody actually measures out the legally stated 2 tablespoon serving size. The typical real-world American pour is 4 to 6 tablespoons. That means you are dumping 24 to 36 grams of highly refined sugar straight onto an empty stomach within the first 15 minutes of waking up. That massive glucose spike triggers an immediate cortisol crash. And how does the exhausted consumer treat that mid-morning crash? They pour a second cup of coffee and add a second heavy splash of Dunkin' creamer. The vicious loop is engineered, the morning crash is the literal business model, and you are paying a 20% price premium just for the licensed logo on the front. Next up at number 6 is Silk Almond Creamer. Silk brilliantly positions itself as the clean, plant-based, planet-friendly alternative for the modern consumer trying to escape industrial dairy. But the ingredient reality completely dismantles this wellness narrative on contact. Almond milk is listed as the first ingredient, which sounds great until you realize that commercial almond milk is roughly 98% water and only 2% actual almond solids. To convert this thin, watery liquid into something that possesses the visual density of real cream, Silk has to pump the mixture full of high oleic sunflower oil and dipotassium phosphate. You are paying a massive premium plant-based price point at Target or Kroger for basic tap water, cheap seed oil, and a laboratory thickener wearing an almond costume. Let's not forget that conventional California almond farming consumes an entire gallon of water per single almond, and the industrial tricalcium phosphate is only thrown in to fake the natural calcium profile of real dairy. You are pouring an environmental and chemical illusion into your mug. Speaking of plant-based deceptions, let's look at number 5. Planet Oat Oat Milk Creamer. This brand capitalized perfectly on the massive oat milk wave that swept through specialty coffee shops and reformatted it for the grocery store creamer aisle. But the underlying food science is unforgiving. Oats naturally contain almost no fat. The biological structure of an oat cannot physically replicate the rich texture of heavy cream. Planet Oat solves this fundamental engineering problem by blending heavily hydrolyzed oat flour with canola oil, gellan, gum, and sodium citrate. The result is a highly viscous starch and oil emulsion that mimics dairy density on your tongue, but delivers a highly concentrated dose of refined industrial omega-6 fatty acids in a matrix that is highly prone to oxidation. Plant-based does not automatically mean clean. In this specific bottle, plant-based is just a clever marketing skin pulled tight over the exact same cheap seed oil framework you find on a generic Coffeemate label. Furthermore, conventional oats are notorious for carrying heavy glyphosate herbicide residues from pre-harvest chemical spraying, and the gellan gum requires harsh chemical solvents for its extraction. They are selling you a processed starch bomb under the guise of saving the planet. And that brings us to number 4. Starbucks at-home creamers, specifically hyper-popular flavors like white chocolate mocha. Licensed through Nestle, this product is strategically positioned as a premium, luxury coffeehouse experience translated to your kitchen counter. But the formulation depends on massive chemical scaffolding just to survive inside your mug. While the base does technically include milk, the structural integrity of that dairy in a hot, acidic coffee environment is entirely propped up by dipotassium phosphate and carrageenan. The dipotassium phosphate is doing a very dirty job. It acts as a chemical buffer to stop the heavily processed, low-grade dairy proteins from immediately curdling and separating when they hit the pH of brewed coffee. Real. Fresh cream never needs a chemical buffer to behave itself. The very presence of this stabilizer on the ingredient deck is a corporate confession that the dairy used is so completely denatured and low quality that it cannot survive a standard cup of coffee without chemical assistance. Meanwhile, their cocoa is processed with alkali, which completely strips away any natural, healthy antioxidant flavonoids, and you are paying double the price for a product that completely lacks any of Starbucks' supposed ethical sourcing standards. It is pure corporate theater. Now, let's look at the absolute bottom of the barrel. Number 3. Great Value Coffee Creamer, the ubiquitous Walmart store brand. This brand built its entire identity on a single word: value. It markets itself as the honest, non-nonsense alternative to overpriced national brands. But this product exists for one solitary purpose: to deliver the absolute lowest possible unit price on the commercial shelf. To hit that dirt cheap price point, the factory combines cheap corn syrup solids with partially hydrogenated soybean oil. Let's be incredibly clear here. Hydrogenated oils are fats that have been chemically restructured at the molecular level using heavy metals so they can survive ambient storage on a warm shelf for months without going rancid. That exact molecular restructuring is the precise mechanism that forced the FDA to theoretically phase out artificial trans fats back in 2018. But remember that 0.5 gram loophole? Because the serving size is listed as a tiny splash, Walmart is legally permitted to print 0 trans fats on the front panel while delivering a measurable dose of dangerous trans fats per real-world pour. You save a single dollar at the register, but your cardiovascular system pays the actual invoice. To make matters worse, it contains sodium aluminosilicate, an anti-caking agent loaded with aluminum compounds that have been heavily linked to neurological issues. And laboratory testing on the powdered variant has even found elevated concentrations of industrial nickel. There isn't even a functioning customer service channel to ask about their sourcing. It is cheap chemical garbage, plain and simple. Which brings us to number 2, Califia Farms Oat Creamer. Califia Farms has invested tens of millions of dollars into perfecting the clean label aesthetic. The matte bottle silhouettes, the beautiful wellness typography, the minimalist lifestyle marketing, and the implicit promise of pure California coast health. But behind that gorgeous visual identity, the structural texture of the liquid is still cheaply constructed using sunflower oil or canola oil. More importantly, the entire flavor architecture relies on the ambiguous phrase, natural flavors. Let me pull back the curtain on the food industry. Natural flavors is one of the absolute loosest, most unregulated umbrella terms in the entire FDA labeling system. Under this single phrase, a manufacturer can legally hide dozens of synthetic chemical compounds, processing aids, and toxic solvent residues engineered specifically to hyperstimulate your palate and make you crave more. You read natural flavors and picture pristine vanilla pods growing in a sunlit field. The factory actually delivers a chemical compound concocted in a laboratory that you have never seen in your life. In 2022, they even faced a major class action lawsuit over misleading vanilla sourcing claims. And those beautiful black plastic bottles aren't even accepted by most municipal recycling systems. It's wolves in chic, minimalist clothing. Finally, we reach the number 1 spot on our skip list, the ultimate diagnostic surprise, Natural Bliss by Coffeemate. This brand is Nestle's brilliant strategic response to the mass exodus of clean eating consumers. The bottle practically screams purity, showing a short list of simple ingredients with the visual restraint of a high-end health food brand. The cheap soybean oil is gone, and real milk and real cream actually appear at the top of the ingredient deck. It is specifically engineered to capture the smart consumer who correctly realize that original Coffeemate is liquid garbage and is actively searching for a clean alternative. But here is the massive corporate catch. The milk and cream used in Natural Bliss are ultra-pasteurized at extreme temperatures. This violent thermal processing completely denatures the delicate dairy proteins and utterly destroys the heat-sensitive omega-3 nutrient profile that would normally be present in real grass-fed cream. Because the processing strips away the natural depth of flavor, the factory has to rebuild the taste profile from scratch using ambiguous, natural flavors to trick your tongue. It's the exact same parent company, utilizing the exact same industrial upstream supply chain, just wearing a cleaner looking outfit to charge you a massive premium. The dairy comes from conventional, confined feedlot cattle fed on industrial grain rations. There is absolutely no organic certification, and the bottle utilizes a cheap cap lining that completely contradicts the premium wellness positioning. They saw you trying to escape their chemical trap, so they built a prettier trap right next to it. And now, what it was worth watching all the way through for. Let's talk about the absolute relief of finding brands that don't treat your morning coffee like a chemical disposal site. The transition from that toxic industrial aisle to the clean list is the exact moment you realize you don't have to sacrifice your health just to get a rich, delicious, frothy cup of morning coffee. The brands we are covering right now chose to reject the hyper-processed seed oil blueprints entirely, and they prove that true quality doesn't require a team of defense attorneys or manipulative serving size loopholes. It just requires real food. We are starting with the most affordable and accessible mainstream option and moving up to the absolute golden premium standard, so there is an option here for every single household budget. At number 3, we have Chobani Coffee Creamer. Chobani completely disrupted the entire dairy aisle by looking at the industrial seed oil framework used by giants like Coffeemate and saying absolutely not. If you turn a bottle of Chobani sweet cream around, the ingredient deck reads milk, cream, cane sugar, and natural flavors. That is the entire composition. There is absolutely zero dipotassium phosphate, zero carrageenan, zero mono and diglycerides, zero soybean oil, and zero gellan gum. Think about how massive that is. The rich, luxurious creaminess that flows into your mug is delivered structurally by the natural fat globules of actual, fresh farm cream, which nature already engineered to disperse flawlessly in hot liquids without chemical assistance. Because of this, Chobani passes the hot coffee curdle test and the ingredient position test with ease. It enters your kitchen counter as real food, not as a science experiment. The dairy is sourced exclusively from RBESS-free farms across upstate New York, and the brand maintains transparent farmer payment programs that sit well above industry minimums. Furthermore, the bottle uses a fully recyclable wrap rather than mixed plastic composites. Now, if we are being completely honest, it does contain added cane sugar, so if you pour it with a heavy hand, you still need to be mindful of your daily sugar intake. But at around $4 to $5 a bottle at Walmart, Target, or Kroger, it costs the exact same as the toxic chemical jugs while offering real, honest dairy. For a plant-based consumer who cannot or chooses not to consume real dairy, number 2 is the absolute structural savior. Malk Organic Oat and Almond Creamers. Malk is the undisputed standard for what plant-based alternatives actually should look like. While companies like Silk use sunflower oil to fake thickness, Planet Oat uses industrial gums to fake density, and Califia Farms uses oil and natural flavors to hyperstimulate your tongue, Malk uses absolutely zero oils, zero gums, zero thickeners, and zero synthetic natural flavors. The ingredient deck on their unsweetened formulation is a beautiful 5 items: filtered water, organic rolled oats, organic almonds, and a touch of Himalayan pink salt. That is it. The rich texture is achieved through a highly intensive, specialized cold-pressed filtration process that extracts a significantly higher fraction of actual organic oat and almond solids than their competitors are ever willing to invest in. Malk simply uses more real plants and more filtration rather than cutting corners with cheap factory fillers. It is USDA organic certified across the entire line, meaning you are completely protected from the glyphosate herbicide residues found on conventional oats. The major downside? Because there are no chemical stabilizers to force the ingredients to hold hands forever, it will naturally separate in your fridge, meaning you have to give it a vigorous shake before every single pour. It is also more expensive, usually running around $6 for a smaller bottle, but you are paying for actual concentrated organic nutrition rather than bottled tap water and canola oil. Finally, we reach our number one spot, the absolute operational ceiling of the entire category. Alexander Family Farm A2 SOTC 2 Organic 16% half and half. Operating a stunning, multi-generational regenerative organic dairy on the Northern California coast, the Alexander family produces a half and half that is fundamentally elite. It contains just two pure ingredients, organic milk and organic cream. But the real magic is at the molecular level. This product is 100% A2 SOTC-A2 dairy. Standard commercial supermarket milk contains the A1 beta-casein protein, a mutated variant that emerging gastroenterology research has heavily associated with systemic bloating, intense digestive discomfort, and low-grade gut inflammation. A2 beta-casein is the original ancient protein variant that pre-industrial heritage cows produced for thousands of years. Maintaining a pure herd of certified heritage A2 CESE A2 cattle is a structurally expensive, logistically exhausting choice that the rest of the mass-market dairy industry considers completely unfeasible at scale. On top of that, Alexander contains an incredible 16% butterfat, making it a staggering 30% creamier than any standard commercial half and half on Earth. When you pour this into your coffee, a beautiful, natural cream line forms at the top, absolute visual proof that the product has undergone zero violent industrial homogenization. They use a low and slow vat pasteurization method that preserves the heat-sensitive nutrients and healthy omega-3 fatty acids that ultra-pasteurization completely vaporizes. They are the very first certified regenerative organic dairy in the United States, meaning their carbon-negative farming practices actually heal the soil every single year. It is expensive, often costing around $7 a pint at Whole Foods or specialty grocers, and because it is minimally processed, it has a shorter shelf life than the chemical bottles. But this is what absolute purity tastes like. You know the farm, you know the family, and you know the herd. To make sure you never get tricked by brilliant corporate marketing again, here are 5 absolute, non-negotiable rules for choosing a clean coffee creamer completely on your own in the grocery aisle. First, always perform the ingredient position check. Turn the bottle around and look at the second and third ingredients. If either of those positions is occupied by an oil, whether it is soybean oil, canola oil, sunflower oil, or vegetable oil, put the bottle right back on the shelf immediately because you are buying an engineered seed oil emulsion, not a real creamer. Second, actively scan the back label for chemical texturizers and inflammatory gums. If you spot carrageenan, gellan gum, cellulose gel, or mono and diglycerides, you are holding a product designed to protect a multi-billion-dollar corporation's warm shipping logistics at the direct expense of your gut health. Third, look out for hidden chemical buffers like dipotassium phosphate or tricalcium phosphate. Their presence on the deck is an open, legal confession by the factory that the underlying dairy or plant base is too denatured and low quality to survive a hot, acidic cup of brewed coffee without chemical stabilization. Fourth, calculate the real-world sugar load based on your actual consumption habits, completely ignoring the legally shrunk 2-tablespoon serving size convention. If your actual daily pour delivers more than 12 grams of refined sugar or high fructose corn syrup, you are kicking off your morning with a massive glucose spike that guarantees a metabolic cortisol crash before noon. Fifth, look for explicit organic certifications or completely clean plant-based filtration statements. True quality will always look like a short, recognizable home recipe rather than a complex corporate patent application. The multi-billion-dollar food industry is built entirely around maximizing shelf stability, faking premium mouthfeel, and cutting production costs to the absolute bone. Three corporate priorities that are fundamentally incompatible with real, minimally processed food. They have identified every single legal flexibility and serving size loophole in the federal labeling architecture and operationalized it at a massive scale to protect their boardroom profits. But the moment you stop reading the front of the shiny bottle and start reading the raw ingredient deck on the back, their entire marketing illusion instantly collapses in your favor. You now possess the absolute truth, meaning you can no longer be blindly sold liquid garbage as a premium morning luxury. Most everyday shoppers will continue to pour processed industrial cooking oil into their mugs because matching the crowd is easy, but you have seen the back of the bottle and you can never unread the deck. Thank you so much for investing your time with me today to expose the dark reality of our supermarket shelves. If you found this investigation eye-opening, please hit that share button right now because you absolutely have a friend or a family member who is pouring high fructose corn syrup and soybean oil into their mug every single morning, thinking it is completely healthy. I want to hear directly from you down in the comments section which of these exact brands is sitting in your refrigerator at home right now, and are you throwing it out today? If you are ready to keep taking your health back from these mega corporations, make sure to watch our related expose breaking down the shocking chemical realities hidden inside your favorite breakfast cereals. Vote with your wallet, buy real food, and take care of your health.